So if you watch our family vlog on YouTube, the Allec family, you know that our house is often very cluttered. Having a 1-year-old is obviously a big contributor to that. But nevertheless, when it comes to my workspace, my office, for example, where my son is not allowed, I have been trying to get better at keeping these areas as clutter-free as possible. And because I'm not naturally the most organized person, I really have to work at it. One of the problems for me that I notice in letting clutter build up is that I'll have something in my office that I haven't used in a long time, but I'll convince myself that I should keep it. I'll think, well, I probably shouldn't throw this thing away. I might need it sooner or later. And then I stuff it into a drawer or a corner or a closet and forget about it. And 9 times out of 10, that was a mistake. It turns out that a lot of the things that I didn't want to get rid of weren't really that important at the time and did not ever become important in the future, and I probably should have just thrown them away in the first place. So in this video, I want to talk about 14 household items that you should get rid of immediately, even if you think there's an off chance that you might miss them later on, because hey, look, chances are really, really low that you actually will need them later on. Number 1, old cables and cords. I've seen some incredible cord collections in my day of my own design, and most of these cords were for obsolete items in my house that I no longer had any use for or probably threw away long ago. And this might be true for your cord collections as well. I mean, think of all the electronics with cords that you've had over the years and decades. I'm talking TVs, DVD players, Blu-ray players, video game consoles, computers, phones, you name it. And even after those things are gone and you throw them away or sell them because they're outdated, it's easy to lose track of the cords that came with them. Of course, you usually think that you don't want to throw away a perfectly good cord, but pretty soon you have a box with 25 or more cords that you couldn't match to anything at all in your house or your apartment if your life depended on it. Personally, I would say that unless a cord is multi-use and non-device specific, such as, for example, a USB cable, or you know exactly what a non-multi-use cord goes to, there's usually no reason to keep a cord around just because you're worried it might be important at some point in the future. If it's not important now, and especially if you have no idea what it's for, you're probably going to be better just throwing it away or giving it away instead of letting that cord collection grow to the point where you don't even want to take the time to go through it. Number 2, sauce packets. This one can get a little bit gross. It's another thing where you don't want it to go to waste, but I've seen people with drawers full of sauce packets from Taco Bell, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, whatever. So you get a few sauces with your order, right? You only use half of them, so you put the rest in a special sauce drawer or something like that. Again, that makes sense if you're going to use the packet in the next few days with leftovers or something, but you don't really want that sauce drawer to accumulate to the point where you just have a bunch of old sauce packets laying around, right? I will say there's probably an exception here if you routinely make use of a particular sauce, maybe soy sauce or ketchup or something like that. But outside of that, just throw the extra sauces away. Number 3, leftovers. The third thing I want to bring up is leftovers. Now, obviously, you want to save leftovers and put them in the fridge if you're going to eat them in the next day or the next few days. But it's really common for people to put leftovers away that keep second guessing whether they actually want to eat them, and eventually they forget about them after they've been in the fridge for a week or 2 or even longer. So if this is a habit you have, I would go through your fridge at least every week or every couple weeks, see what leftovers you have, think about what you're really going to eat, and then just throw the rest away. Obviously, you're going to have a bigger problem when you have to deal with not only old leftovers, but old moldy leftovers. Another thing I do is I set a reminder on my phone to eat my leftovers. If I got some leftovers right after a meal, I'll set a phone for every lunchtime over the next few days reminding me to eat those leftovers in the fridge instead of letting them go to waste. Number 4, anything you haven't worn in the past year. Okay, so this one is a little bit more controversial. Some people really like to have a lot of clothes to pick from, but for me, if I haven't worn something in the past year, that's probably a good sign that I'm not going to wear it in the coming year. So personally, that's the test I use. If I haven't worn it in about a year or so, and I don't think I'm going to wear it anytime soon, then it's probably time to either throw it away or donate it if it's still in good condition. That goes for every kind of clothing from socks and shoes to pants, shirts, hats, whatever. Obviously, there are going to be exceptions. For example, maybe you have a nice suit or an elegant dress that you haven't had an occasion to wear in the past year or so, but the next time you're invited to a nice wedding, you might put it on, right? Obviously, you don't want to get rid of that. But in most cases, I'd say it's pretty safe to get rid of something if you haven't worn it in the past year. Number 5, old buttons. This one is pretty similar. A lot of clothes come with extra buttons, and of course there's a chance you'll need that button at some point. But eventually you're going to get rid of whatever the button came with, And most of the time, you probably won't even use the extra button at all. So over time, you're just going to be collecting more and more buttons that you don't need. Okay, maybe you really like a particular button and you want to keep that one. Maybe you want to keep 2 or 3 extras, but anything beyond that is just taking up space. So there's really no reason to keep buttons unless there's a good chance you're going to need them at some point. Number 6, old accessories. Okay, so maybe you've gotten rid of your old cables, but you might also have old remote controls, PlayStation controllers, mice, keyboards, etc. Really any kind of electronic accessory that you don't need anymore. So again, if this is a habit that you have, don't let these things build up. Make sure to go through your boxes, your cabinets, and your drawers periodically to declutter and have more space to organize the things you're actually using. Number 7, books you'll never read or reread. Okay, again, some people like to have book collections, right? There's something to that. And I think we all know people who have shelves with hundreds and hundreds of books. And if you have the space, then there isn't necessarily anything wrong with that. But when I have a physical copy of a book that I've had for a while, and I haven't gotten around to reading it, or maybe I read it once and haven't looked at it since, then I try to decide whether or not there's any realistic chance that I'll want to open it up again. If the answer is no, well, there's probably someone out there that does want to read it, so as long as the book is in decent condition, I can either sell it to a used bookstore or give it to someone I know. If it's just that I don't want to read it right now, but I don't necessarily want to lose it forever, then I might ask my friends and family if they're interested. That way, I can get as much use out of it as possible because I can always ask for my friends or family to borrow it again. Either way, the book is doing a lot more than it was going to do sitting on my shelf for years and years. This would also apply to movies, games, really any form of media that you could give or sell to someone else or let someone you know borrow. Number 8, physical restaurant menus. One really common marketing technique, you're probably very familiar with this if you live in a city, but restaurants will either send out physical menus to people who live in the area, or they will put one in the bag when you order delivery or takeout. So the idea here is that you keep the menu on hand, and then when you want to order food again, they already have it in with you because the menu is in your kitchen drawer. Well, okay, that might have been helpful back when you ordered delivery over the phone and you had to ask them what was on the menu. But now that you can order through Uber Eats or Postmates, or if you're ordering over the phone, simply look on their website or on Yelp to see their menu, there's really no reason to keep a physical restaurant menu anymore, especially considering that it might be outdated. It's not like you're going to need it, right, to see what they have, and you'll probably have the restaurant in your order history anyway, so you won't have to worry about forgetting the name or the phone number or something like that. So rather than putting the menu away, forgetting about it, and recycling it later on, just recycle it now and keep that space free for something else. Number 9, mismatched containers. In the same way that you don't want to keep a VHS tape if you don't have a VHS player anymore, you probably don't want to waste space by keeping mismatched containers. For example, Tupperware containers. Once you lose the lid, there's really no reason to keep the container around, and vice versa. This would also go for things like lids for your pots and pans. A lot of people go through pots and pans, but they keep the lids, and that can pretty quickly end up with a bunch of extra lids that you don't really need. Of course, you might be able to repurpose a container with no lid for something else, but if you don't have a clear plan for that, then it's going to be easier to just get rid of it and save the extra space. Number 10, cameras. All right, this might be another controversial one. I don't have anything against cameras.
I am speaking into a camera right now.
But I know people who have cameras that they've had since before smartphones came out, and they've just kept the camera laying around. Obviously, you shouldn't get rid of a high-quality camera if you really use it. That's not what this is about. But if you take 99% of your photos and videos on your phone, then you probably don't need to keep a separate camera around, especially with how good smartphone cameras are these days. And a good camera might actually be worth some money to you. So instead of letting it sit there doing nothing, you can clean it up, make sure it's still working, and then put it on eBay or Declutter to sell it. I'll put a link to Declutter in the description so you can at least maybe get some money out of it. Number 11, old greeting cards. Now, everyone has different feelings about greeting cards and other keepsakes. I don't want to say you should never keep them, right? Obviously, you should never throw away something if it has significant sentimental value to you. On the other hand, if you get a greeting card from, grandma every Christmas with $20 inside, yes, it's very sweet, but you probably don't need to keep every single one of those cards. Personally, I think they start to kind of pile up. You end up with a big stack of Hallmark cards. And unless there's a reason you want to keep a specific card, I think it's safe to probably throw it away after a few weeks. If a card has a lot of sentimental value to you, keep it, of course. If you're not sure, maybe consider taking a picture of it to document what the individual wrote to you. Number 12, pens and pencils. Okay, it might be you or someone else in your life, but I think we all know someone who has basically like 1,000 pens in their house or their apartment. And this is just another thing that's just needless clutter. You don't need literally dozens upon dozens and dozens of pens lying around. I mean, be honest with yourself. How many pens do you think you and your household will need for the rest of your life? How many pens do you go through a year right now, right? Especially considering that most of us type more than we write with a pen. Do a little math in your head, maybe back into a rough number, and then throw away the extra pens. You'll feel a lot more organized when you only have a small number of pens in specific spots around your house, and then you can rely on them to be there and to work every time. And for pity's sake, throw out a pen if it's out of ink. Number 13, cookbooks. Cookbooks are another thing that feel nice to have around. Cookbooks can be good decor, and maybe there are one or two recipes you've looked at and you want to try, but in my experience, most people of cookbooks still end up looking for recipes online almost every time they want to cook. And one reason I think we're hesitant to get rid of cookbooks is that they were really helpful at one point in time. Up until the past few decades, you wouldn't have had access to that many recipes, and a cookbook was probably the best way to learn something new and trust that it would turn out well. But in this day and age, it's just so easy to get recipes online. You don't need to keep a whole lot of cookbooks on hand. Anything you want to make, you can find 100 recipes and tutorials for it from celebrity chefs, YouTubers, bloggers, etc. And if there are a few recipes you want to keep on hand, you can just take a picture of them on your phone. So again, I recognize that some people like the feel of a physical cookbook, and that's great if that's what you want. But for most people who are just interested in the practical value of cookbooks, I think it's more efficient to pass those on and put some bookmarks on your phone for your favorite online recipes. Number 14, anything cluttering your drawers and cabinets. Okay, I think I've covered some of the most common things people tend to keep laying around, but ultimately we all have our own unique clutter, don't we? One thing I've noticed is that people usually have an overflow drawer or an overflow cabinet, a junk drawer, whatever you call it, so they don't really need to keep something out, but they don't really want to throw it away, and there isn't really a good place for it. They'll just throw it in the junk drawer, right? Or the junk closet, or whatever it is, for whenever they need it again. And later on, that junk drawer is going to be more of a contained mess. Yes, it might only be one drawer or whatever, but it's just going to contain all the odds and ends that you didn't know what to do with at the time. So every few months, at least, you're going to want to go through that junk drawer, that overflow drawer, and make a decision on each item, whether you really truly need it or whether it is truly junk and you should just throw it away. And as much as possible, at least, you should try to keep your drawers and cabinets organized so that each one is for some specific type of thing, rather than just containing a bunch of random stuff that you didn't want to throw away. All right, everybody, those are 14 items that you probably just want to throw away immediately. Do you disagree with any of them? Are there any other items that you think people should just throw away immediately? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.